I'm Justin Warmoth. On today's program, two Central Florida lawmakers will discuss the coronavirus response from the federal to the state level. We begin with State Representative Anna Eskamani and Florida's struggling unemployment system.
First off, the governor this week put out his phase one of reopening the state of Florida. What's your takeaway? What was your reaction when you saw his guidelines?
Well, I'm glad that there's local control. That was a concern of mine, that local governments would not be able to make decisions on their own. And I'm happy to see the local control was maintained, because I do think every county needs to make decisions based on their own community needs, their own economic challenges, public health concerns. And so I'm glad that every county leadership can make that decision. I will say that what is left out from this picture of phase one is the economic issues. The reality is that not every business sector is going to open back up in phase one. And even for those that are, it's a very a small amount, 25% for the restaurants, for example. I'm concerned about employees that to this day have not gotten the unemployment yet, or employees that will return to work not getting paid for the weeks that they were waiting for their benefits. And of course, just because of Florida's really burdensome unemployment system, there could be folks that are working part-time, and that could make them ineligible for their benefits, forcing them to reapply and go through the process again. So there are some economic nuances, if you will, that I feel like were not answered in phase one, especially when it comes to our tourism economy and our event production community. You know, event production in particular, this is going to be a community where it's going to take a very long time for them to recover. And here in Orlando, that's a big part of our community, our folks that host, whether it's sporting events or musicals or even just social gatherings. These are folks that typically work seasonal anyways, and they already are going to face seasonal barriers, but of course, just the lack of jobs. And I want to make sure that these folks are going to have benefits long term.
Can you break down the latest when it comes to the system?
Absolutely. And I think catastrophe is one of the best words. I mean, it's been a disaster, and it's been very frustrating because the governor will barely talk about it. You know, every press release he's given earlier in this week, there was just no update. And it's been very frustrating because we're working with, at this point, over 1,000 different cases and more, just trying to get their benefits. And so this past weekend, we saw some major developments in the sense that the website was closed the entire weekend. And so claims were processed. Unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of these claims were deemed ineligible. And these folks were shocked. And it includes Disney workers, hotel workers, restaurant workers, folks who work at some of our chain companies. And it was very surprising that they were ineligible because they're W-2 employees. They've worked years at their companies. Some have even seen their coworkers get through and they didn't. So there were so many question marks and unknowns. And on their Connect pages, there was no information of wage determination. There was no description of why they were deemed ineligible. So it's caused a lot of even more chaos, in the mess that was already there. And because the Connect website is so difficult to use, because the call center doesn't work, it's hard to get someone on the phone. Folks have really had to turn to untraditional means to try to solve these problems. And in particular, our office has done our best to step up to be a resource to Floridians. Obviously, I'm not DO, so I can't make any determination decisions on your claim. We've been trying to at least answer your questions and give people the best advice so they can make an informed decision. And on this group of people who are ineligible, the latest that DO has provided is that they're encouraging people to reapply versus appeal. And they've committed to back pay for these individuals. But the thought process for DO is that if you are indeed ineligible, you can then apply for pandemic unemployment assistance, or PUA. As many folks know, this is part of the CARES Act, and we mostly talk about PUA under the context of contract workers, self-employed folks, and gig economy workers. But if you actually read the language, PUA is for those that are otherwise ineligible in their state. And so the requirements for PUA are different compared to Florida's benefits. So DO has encouraged folks to reapply. And if you have a date of an account made after April 5th, if you do become ineligible again, you'll see the PUA portal pop up. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a mess. It's been a mess. I mean, there's some movement now in the sense that we are seeing more people get paid, but the payments are also all over the place. And there's still a lot of just inconsistencies in what's coming from the governor's office down to the people navigating this every day.
It's wearing on people to go through this process to finally get your application in the system, only to be told that you're ineligible with no reason given to you. And so then you have to reapply. So these folks who waited weeks to get into the system at first are now having to reapply again. This timing is big when it comes to getting these benefits back to folks who really need it.
Right. Well, and just to echo my frustration with it, we have been helping with folks who are pending since March from 6 to 8 weeks and then getting this answer and just, absolutely not even just shocked in the sense of surprise, but like stressed, like mentally draining. People saying they're just going to give up because they don't feel like they have control of their situation. And I'm very curious too, why people have to reapply to have the portal available to them. I'm also concerned about folks who are ineligible that seem like they should have been eligible. And there have been a lot of questions about, was it the work search requirement, which the governor said was waived, but still showed up on people's accounts? Was there information just missing because the Connect website didn't save it? And some folks have said that there were messages in their inbox that showed up weeks later, that they were dated earlier in April, later in March. And so, all these inconsistencies, and we've asked the department. Initially, they gave us pushback and said, if people aren't eligible, they're ineligible. But as of earlier this week, they said, okay, we're gonna investigate a little bit more. We're gonna look into this. And one of the latest issues we have as well is for folks who are eligible, their account says inactive. So now we're trying to figure out what does inactive mean, right? So we pass everything up to DO and DMS. It is a challenge even for us as lawmakers because they're not always communicated with us. I put on my investigative hat on and I found the emails for attorneys who work at DO, and I emailed them questions about the statute because I couldn't get an answer from anyone else. So we're all getting, we're knocking on doors. We're doing our best. They get their benefits and they get through this.
The governor touted the new system, additional workers, new servers. It just doesn't seem like it's had that large of an impact. I'm curious if other states have had problems like the state of Florida.
Well, Florida is very unique in the sense that when we saw all states beginning to release their claims, Florida was the slowest. This was at least of a week and a half ago. I hope that Florida will not be on the bottom of every state. States have had their own hiccups. And for example, I know in some of our northeastern states, they actually implemented a staggering program to help with the call traffic and the website traffic. So they would say, last names in this category, call during these times. And I have asked DO to implement some sort of organized traffic control, if you will, to help people get on the phones, because to your point, they hired staff. They've hired 2 call centers. The state has spent $110 million on 2 call centers. Members of other branches in the executive, our other staff members are spending some volunteer hours. They're paid, but they're volunteering some of their everyday actions with DO. So there seems to be physical bodies engaging, but they're not informed. And there's actually been many cases of a call center agent saying the wrong thing. There's been many cases of a call center agent, unfortunately, just not being able to help because their computer crashes or they can't access the computer. They're new. So it's been, all the comments made around we beefed up the system, we've beefed up staffing. It doesn't operationalize. We don't actually see it or feel it right now.